Hi there, I'm Johanna Lee, and today I wanted to talk about pivot tables. And specifically, I wanted to talk about 5 insights that you can draw, not kind of, but can draw from a data set through a pivot table. And so for those of you that don't know, pivot tables are awesome. What you do to create them, I created a video for this that goes into further detail, but it is an option on the insert page of Excel, also an option on Google Sheets, which I am planning on creating a video for that because there are some slight nuances there. So anyway, you select all the data, you hit pivot table, and you hit enter. And so the first kind of insight that I like to gather from a pivot table is to remove duplicates. So for those of you that know, you can actually remove duplicates from the data tab. So if you go to data, you can hit remove duplicates here. It's also an option to go into your conditional formatting and highlight duplicate values. Is something that I do, but say I just want to say, like, how many vendors does this person shop at? What I can do is can create a pivot table and I can go to vendor and just see from there. So as I can see, this person has shopped at a total of 896 unique vendors. Um, Not to say that this person hasn't been multiple places. If I select a count here, what it's going to show me is, hey, they've gone to Whole Foods 32 times and they shopped at Wish 97 times. And so that's not what this is telling me. It's telling me, if I just put this here, it's condensing everything into one. So that's the first thing is I think it's a really easy way to identify unique values rather than deleting duplicates or highlighting duplicates and filtering out the highlights. All the ways that you can kind of identify duplicates, pivot tables way faster. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think it's a really good way to identify misspellings. So for example, in my day column, what I've done is there's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then this like rogue Wednesday that is misspelled. So that is also something that I definitely take a look at, especially if it's a condensed table. It might be difficult to go through 1,000 vendors, but it would be easy to go through, days of the week. So as I can tell from that, let's see if that fixed it, refresh. I'll try to find this Rogue Wednesday here. And instead, I'm going to make it the formula that is hitting that. And so then what I can do is I can refresh this table and it'll condense it up. So definitely really great for misspellings to kind of quickly identify, especially if your list is short and your data set is small. So that is another thing. One of the other things that is really quick right away is going to be your blanks. So for example, I have categories of what the expense is in this data set. So if I click categories, I can see right away, and it's always going to be like right above your grand total amount when you're looking at a pivot table, but I can see that I have blanks. And so I can go back to this column and say, hey, like I'll look at this blank and say, okay, American Airlines, this needs to be an A for airlines, something like that. So that is something that I definitely look at. Sometimes you will get, and I know I've said sometimes a million times, but there are, all of these nuances to pivot tables and data sets. So at some point in time, you might get a data set that has blanks and random columns, but you actually don't even care about it. So pivot tables is a good way to present data and show, hey, how many blanks do I actually have? If I go to here, I have one vendor that's a blank, so I don't really care. Or it might not even affect, the blanks might not even affect the columns that you need and are using in your insights. So definitely something to consider, and it's a quick way to identify blanks in a data set. So there is that. So I'm going to refresh this because we added that airline thing and it'll go away. So that is the third one, to see blanks. The other way that I use pivot tables is to identify date errors. So if I click on date here and it's a date formatted correctly, what I'll see is that it'll break it down quarters, years, and days and date. In this scenario, it just, gave me a list of things. And as you can see, it's not in any order, or any, concrete order here. I'm seeing 5/17/2022 at the top. So what I'm going to do then is, this is telling me is that not everything in this column is a date. So I'm going to go back to my data set and I'm going to look at the drop down here. I'm going to unselect and select these two because these are not formatted as a date. And let's take a look. It looks like there is an apostrophe at the beginning here. So I'm going to fix those. And then I'm going to refresh. All right, so if I hit date again now, what it's going to do is it's going to condense it. And so this is like a really great view to kind of see, if you don't even want quarters, you can take that out here and I can just look at my months and then the date here. So, if I didn't have it like this, I would need to, if not everything in a date column is formatted as a date, you're not going to get this kind of insight into, years, quarters, months, and so on and so forth. So definitely something that you can kind of quickly identify what dates are wrong in a data set and what you need to omit in order to kind of see this sort of level of detail, which is great. So the last thing that I think is, it's kind of a little more advanced than the others that we've been through, and I'll just make a new pivot table here, is related to things that you don't expect to be in certain categories. So this is hyper specific to this data set, but what I really want to kind of demonstrate is just like the power of the pivot table just initially to check your data set. So what I mean by this is, say I have, a category and A is for airlines, right? So I expect American Airlines to just be a airline, in that category first and foremost. And so what I don't want is I don't want my vendor, I can see Alaskan, American, British, all of these things. But what I don't want to see, or what would be odd and interesting to see, is if one of these had was in a different section, was in the beauty section. Am I buying beauty products at Alaskan Airlines? I don't know. And so what you can do is you can highlight duplicate values in a data set here, and we can identify those issues. So I see American Airlines and Delta Airlines, they're highlighted, which means they're also included in one of these other groupings. So what I can do then is I can go to American Airlines, and I'm just going to click this vendor, and I can see, oh, hey, it's in beauty. This must be a typo. So I can change that here. And I'd be able to refresh the pivot table and kind of demonstrate, hey, that I'm not like questioning this full data set because I can see that certain vendors that I expect to be certain categories are actually categorized correctly. So, oftentimes you'll be at work and you'll think you did a great job on something, but there's a minor tweak or, maybe a spelling error, and your boss just neglects the whole project because they're like, I don't know, your attention to detail is kind of suspect. So that is something too that I use pivot tables for on the tail end to say, I'm expecting this. Is that what's showing up in the data set? And the pivot table is a really good way to do that. And so, that fifth tip and last tip there is really just to kind of think through what your data set represents and to see if it is actually portraying that in the details. And so I hope you found this helpful. I love pivot tables. And so if you have any tips for yourself, or if you need me to walk through anything in more detail, feel free to leave a comment below. And I appreciate you watching, and I hope you found this helpful. Thanks.